I burst through the courthouse doors, my lungs burning from the sprint across 3 city blocks. Through the glass window I saw her. My mother stood at a mahogany desk, pen poised above a stack of papers. The realtor beside her smiled like he'd just won the lottery. I slammed my palms against the door. "You can't sell it. It's mine." My voice cracked, raw and desperate. Mom didn't even flinch. She looked up slowly, her expression as cold as January rain, and said 2 words that would haunt me for years. "Not anymore." My knees weakened. "Dad left it to me." She signed anyway. The pen made a soft scratching sound against paper. Camera flashed. The realtor extended his hand for a congratulatory shake. I stood there, frozen, watching my inheritance disappear in blue ink. That was the moment my mother sold more than just my father's house. He sold me out. My name is Kara Holt, and this is how I learned that family doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes it just means you share the same blood while they drain you dry. 2 years earlier, the rain had hammered against the funeral home windows like angry fists. Dad's casket sat beneath a spray of white lilies, the kind he always said looked too stiff for real flowers. Mom stood beside me, tissues crumpled in her fist, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She looked devastated, broken in a way I'd never seen before. The mourners left one by one until only we remained. That night, back at the house Dad built with his own hands, Mom sat me down at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red but strangely focused. She slid a folder across the worn wood. "We need to talk about the estate," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. Inside were documents, legal terms I didn't fully understand. She explained about probate, about taxes, about how complicated death makes everything. If you sign a temporary deed transfer, it'll clear probate faster. Just until everything settles. I hesitated, pen hovering. Something felt wrong, but this was my mother. The woman who raised me. I trusted her. I signed. She smiled warmly, relief flooding her face. Behind her, in the hallway shadow, my stepbrother Dean leaned against the doorframe. He was smirking. 3 months passed before I overheard them. I'd come home early from my shift at the diner, my feet aching and my apron still smelling like grease. Their voices drifted from Mom's bedroom, hushed but urgent. I froze at the bottom of the stairs. "Once the paperwork clears, we can sell for triple," Dean said. His voice held that oily confidence I'd always hated. Mom murmured something I couldn't quite catch. My chest tightened, each breath suddenly requiring effort. I climbed the stairs slowly, each creak of the wood announcing my presence. When I pushed open the door, they both turned, faces smooth and innocent. "What paperwork?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mom blinked. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about?" Dean shrugged, picking at his nails like he hadn't just been discussing my inheritance. "You're hearing things, sis. Stress does that." I wanted to scream, to grab them both and shake the truth loose. Instead, I backed away, doubting my own ears. Later that week, I met with Dad's old lawyer at a coffee shop downtown. He stirred his coffee slowly, avoiding my eyes. "Be careful who's listed as the current owner," he said quietly. Then he left. I tore through Dad's office that night, pulling files from drawers until paper covered the floor like snow. Finally I found it. A clause Dad had written in his own handwriting, attached to the original deed. "This property cannot be sold without the explicit written consent of Kara Holt." Relief washed over me so strongly I nearly cried. He'd protected me. Even from the grave, Dad had my back. I clutched the paper to my chest, breathing easier for the first time in months. But that relief lasted exactly 4 days. On Tuesday morning, a certified letter arrived. I opened it standing in the driveway, still wearing my pajamas. The county clerk's office had processed a deed refiling. My name wasn't on it anymore. Just Mom's. The protection Dad built had been quietly dismantled while I'd been serving eggs and trusting my mother. My phone rang that afternoon. An unfamiliar number. "This is Patricia calling from Weston Legal regarding the property at 847 Maple Drive. You'll need to vacate within 30 days for scheduled renovation." The words hit like punches. "Vacate? I live there." Her voice remained professional, detached. "According to our records, you're not the current owner. The owner has requested access for improvements before listing." I hung up, hands trembling. I came home on a Thursday to find a moving truck parked in our driveway. Our driveway. Dad's driveway. Men in gray uniforms carried furniture down the porch steps. My childhood dresser. The rocking chair Dad refinished when I was 7. The bookshelf we'd built together one rainy Saturday. I ran toward them screaming. Stop. Put that back. One of the movers, a tired-looking man with a clipboard, blocked my path. We're just doing our job, miss. Owner's orders. I pushed past him into the house. Mom stood in the living room, arms crossed, watching the systematic dismantling of my life. You'll thank me when I sell it, she said without looking at me. Her voice was ice. The market's hot right now. This place will bring in serious money. I felt something break inside my chest. Dad left this to me. She finally turned, her eyes empty of the warmth I'd known my whole life. Your father's dead. I'm the one who suffered through this marriage. I'm the one who deserves compensation. By sunset, I was standing on the curb with 2 suitcases and a box of photos. Dean drove past in Dad's old pickup truck, the one with the dent in the fender from when we'd hit a deer together. My inheritance now his. He didn't even wave. I slept on my friend Taylor's couch for 3 weeks. The springs dug into my back every night and I'd wake up stiff and aching. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the shame that followed me everywhere. Family gossip spread like wildfire. Aunt Patricia called to lecture me about respect. Your mother raised you alone after your father passed. She deserves that house more than some ungrateful child. Uncle Marcus stopped returning my calls. Even my cousin Jade, who I'd grown up with, sent a cold text. Mom says you're being selfish. Maybe just let it go. Nobody asked for my side. Nobody wanted to know about the forged papers or the stolen inheritance. They just saw a daughter fighting her grieving mother and I was automatically the villain. One night, while sorting through my box of belongings, I found an old photograph. I was maybe 5 years old, sitting on Dad's shoulders on the front porch. His smile was huge, genuine. On the back, in his messy handwriting, promise me you'll always protect this home. It's where love lives. Dad. I pressed the photo to my chest and cried until Taylor knocked softly, bringing tea I couldn't drink. The house wasn't just wood and walls. It was the last piece of him I had left. Mom hosted a family dinner 6 months later. I wasn't invited, but Jade sent me a video someone posted online. The dining room glowed with candlelight. Wine glasses clinked. Mom stood at the head of the table, radiant in a new dress I knew she couldn't afford before. I have wonderful news, she announced, her voice carrying that practiced sweetness she used for audiences. I've accepted an offer on the Maple Drive property. Triple what we expected. Applause erupted. Dean raised his glass. To Mom for making smart choices. The camera panned across smiling faces. Family members I'd known my entire life celebrated my loss like a victory. Then someone asked, "Where's Kara?" The room went quiet for just a moment. Mom's smile tightened. My daughter is going through a phase. She'll understand someday that I did this for both of us. Aunt Patricia nodded sympathetically. Young people today are so ungrateful. Cousin Marcus added, she'll come around when she sees the money. I watched that video 17 times, each viewing carving the betrayal deeper into my bones. The next day I showed up at the restaurant where they were having brunch. I walked straight to their table, my hands shaking but my voice steady. If that's what family means to you, then I'm done. Mom dabbed her mouth with a napkin, unfazed. Don't make a scene, Kara. I left without another word. The real estate office on 5th Street had a help wanted sign fading in the window. I walked in wearing the only professional clothes I owned, a wrinkled blazer Taylor had lent me. The woman behind the desk looked up from her computer. Her name tag read Angela Reeves, office manager. I need a job, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I need to learn how this system works. She studied me for a long moment. You got experience? I shook my head. But I'm willing to do anything. Filing, answering phones, making copies. I learn fast. Something in my expression must have convinced her. Maybe she saw the desperation, or maybe she just needed help. We've got an opening for an assistant. Pays terrible, hours are long. But if you're serious about learning real estate, this is where you start. I started the next Monday. The work was exactly as she'd described. I filed contracts until my fingers cramped, answered phones until my voice went hoarse, made so many copies the machine knew my footsteps. But every document I touched taught me something. Property codes, zoning laws, deed transfers, title searches. I absorbed it all like I was studying for the most important test of my life. 6 months in, Angela found me staying late again reading through old case files. She set down a coffee beside me. "One day you'll know how to buy it all back." It wasn't a promise. It was a prophecy. Mom stopped answering my calls completely. Her voicemail was always full, or maybe she'd blocked my number. I tried texting, emailing, even sending a letter. Nothing. It was like I'd been erased from her life as thoroughly as my name had been erased from the deed. Dean sent me messages though. They came late at night when he was probably drunk. "You're nothing without Dad's house. Mom's living her best life without you dragging her down. Face it, Kara. You lost." Each message was a small knife, precise and sharp. I'd stare at my phone screen until the words blurred, anger and grief mixing into something that tasted like poison. One particularly bad night, I sat on Taylor's bathroom floor, back against the cold tub, and let myself completely fall apart. I'd worked 14 hours, my feet screamed, my head pounded, and I had exactly $43 in my checking account. What was I doing? What made me think I could ever get the house back? Then my phone buzzed. My first real paycheck had been deposited. It wasn't much. After taxes and rent money for Taylor, barely anything remained. But I stared at those numbers glowing on the screen and something shifted inside me. It was mine. Earned by my own hands, my own hours. Nobody could take it. Nobody could forge papers or manipulate signatures. That tiny amount of money was proof I could rebuild from nothing. Dad had done it. Now I would too. I was cleaning out my desk drawer a year later when I found it. A small brass key taped to the bottom of an old notebook from college. I turned it over in my palm, confused at first. Then I remembered. Dad's safe deposit box. He'd given me a key when I turned 18, saying it was for emergencies. I'd forgotten about it in all the chaos. The bank was downtown, a 20-minute bus ride from the office. I went during my lunch break, my heart hammering. The clerk led me to a small room lined with metal boxes. She used her master key and my key together, sliding out box 237. Inside were papers. I unfolded them with trembling fingers. Dad's original will. Not a copy. The real document with his actual signature and 2 witness signatures I recognized. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't imagining things. "I leave my property at 847 Maple Drive solely to my daughter, Kara Holt, to be transferred upon my death. This is my final wish and cannot be altered." The date of signature was clear. 2 months before he died. 6 months before Mom had me sign that temporary transfer. The signature date proved everything. Mom hadn't just taken my house. She'd committed fraud. I photocopied everything twice, put the originals back in the box and walked to the nearest law office. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The attorney's name was Vincent Shaw. He had kind eyes and gray hair, and he listened to my entire story without interrupting. When I finished, I slid the photocopied will across his desk. He read it slowly, his expression growing darker. "This is clear-cut," he said finally. "Your mother forged a transfer after your father's death, using your grief to manipulate you." Hope bloomed in my chest for the first time in over a year. "So I can get it back? You can help me." He set down the papers and folded his hands. "Unfortunately, the statute of limitations for contesting the deed has passed. In this state you have 1 year from the date of transfer to file. According to these dates, you're 3 months past that deadline." The hope died as quickly as it had sparked. "So there's nothing? She just gets away with it." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "Legally, your options for recovering the property are extremely limited. Practically none, given the timeline." I felt tears building but refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not now." He watched me for a moment, then spoke quietly. "But you can wait for karma. In my experience, it always collects. People who take what isn't theirs rarely enjoy it for long." I left his office with nothing but those photocopies and a hollow ache where my hope had been. The subway ride home was a blur. But his words stayed with me. Karma always collects. 4 years passed like water over stones, slowly reshaping everything. I worked my way up from assistant to junior associate to senior agent. Angela retired and recommended me as her replacement. At 28, I managed the office that had once been my refuge. I bought a small apartment, nothing fancy but mine. I hadn't spoken to Mom in all that time. Not a single word. Then one Tuesday morning my phone rang with a number I'd deleted but still recognized. I almost didn't answer. Kara. Mom's voice cracked. He sounded older, smaller somehow. I need help. I said nothing. It's Dean. His business ventures, they failed. All of them. He borrowed money from me, from everyone. We're broke, Kara. The bank is threatening foreclosure. Still I remain silent. Please. I'm your mother. You can't just abandon family. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Almost. You chose this, I said quietly. Then I hung up. My hands were steady. My conscience was clear. I'd spent 4 years building a life from the wreckage she'd left me in. She'd spent 4 years spending money that should have been my inheritance, living in a house she'd stolen. Now the bill had come due. Karma, it seemed, had started collecting. I should have felt triumphant. That I just felt tired. But I didn't call back. 3 months later I was scrolling through property listings when I saw it. 847 Maple Drive. My house. Dad's house. Listed for sale. The description read, charming family home, original hardwood, needs minor updates, motivated seller. The price was listed at a fraction of what Mom had bragged about getting. I clicked through the photos. The house looked tired. Paint peeling, gutters sagging, the garden Dad loved completely overgrown. She'd let it fall apart. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall. The market had crashed since Mom bought all those expensive clothes and vacations. Properties sat unsold for months. I opened my laptop again and checked the listing history. It had been active for 94 days. No offers. No bites. Nothing. The house that was supposed to make Mom rich was now an anchor dragging her under. I bookmarked the listing and went back to work. But every few days I check it. Still active. Still desperate. Still waiting. I didn't contact her. I didn't reach out. I just watched from a distance as the karma Vincent had promised finally arrived. The universe, it turned out, had a longer memory than the statute of limitations. And it was far less forgiving than any court of law. Mom was drowning and I was standing on the shore watching the waves. For now that was enough. Angela called me into her office on a gray Monday morning. Rain streaked the windows, turning the city into watercolor blurs. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile. I'm retiring, she said without preamble. For real this time. My daughter wants me to move to Florida, be near the grandkids. I nodded, feeling a strange sadness. She'd been more of a mentor than my own mother ever was. I'll miss having you around. She smiled. You won't have time to miss me. I'm leaving the agency to you. I stared at her. What? You've earned it, Kara. You've turned this place around. Clients ask for you specifically. You know the market better than anyone. She slid a folder across the desk. It's all in here. Papers are drawn up. Just needs your signature. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The agency, the reputation, the client list. Everything. Angela, I can't afford to buy you out. She waved her hand dismissively. I'm not selling. I'm giving. Call it payment for all those late nights and terrible pay when you started. Tears I'd held back for years finally spilled over. Thank you. He squeezed my hand. Make them pay for underestimating you. 2 weeks later I sat behind Angela's old desk, my name on the door. The phone rang constantly. A new client needing help selling property. I picked up, professional and calm. The voice on the other end made my blood freeze. Yes, I'm calling about listing a house. 847 Maple Drive. It wasn't Mom. It was her lawyer. I took the case using my middle name and Angela's old email. Karam. Holt became KM Reeves for this one transaction. Mom's lawyer never questioned it. He was probably the 5th attorney she'd hired, desperate and cheap. I assigned myself as the listing agent. Every open house, every showing, every detail. All under my control. The first time I drove to the house, my hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I parked across the street and just stared. The blue shutters Dad painted were faded and cracked. The porch where we'd spent summer evenings drinking lemonade sagged on one side. The mailbox he'd installed, the one with our name on it, hung crooked. It looked abandoned. Haunted. I waited until after dark to use my key. Yes, I still had a key. Mom never thought to change the locks. The door creaked open into darkness. I flipped the light switch. Nothing. Power was off. Using my phone's flashlight, I walked through rooms thick with dust and silence. The kitchen where Dad taught me to make pancakes. the living room where we'd watched movies, the hallway where he'd marked my height every birthday. All of it empty. All of it dying. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked like it remembered me. My old bedroom door was closed. I pushed it open. Moonlight fell through the window onto bare walls. But there, carved into the wooden frame, I saw it. Kara's room in my 10-year-old handwriting. I traced the letters with my finger and cried silently. My phone buzzed. A buyer had registered for the auction. Me. The open house was scheduled for Saturday. I arrived early, unlocking the door and opening windows to air out the staleness. By noon, curious buyers wandered through, commenting on the potential and good bones. I stood in the corner wearing professional clothes and a pleasant smile, answering questions while my heart quietly bled. Mom showed up at 2. I saw her through the window, stepping out of an old sedan that wasn't the luxury car she used to drive. She'd aged. Gray streaked her hair and lines I didn't remember creased her face. She walked through the house touching walls like she was saying goodbye. She didn't recognize me. I'd changed too. Grown harder, sharper, more carefully constructed. I was just another agent in a blazer to her. Dean arrived 20 minutes later. I heard him before I saw him, his voice loud and angry. Why are we listing so low? This place is worth double. Mom's voice was tired. Nobody's buying, Dean. We're 4 months behind on payments. The bank is threatening foreclosure next month. This is your fault, he spat. You spent everything. She turned on him, years of frustration finally breaking through. I spent everything? You're the one who borrowed hundreds of thousands for businesses that failed. You're the one who crashed Dad's truck drunk. You're broke because of you. Their voices rose. Other buyers stopped, turning to watch the spectacle. I stood frozen, absorbing every word. Dean's face went red. You spent Kara's inheritance on clothes and vacations. Don't pretend you're innocent. Someone's phone appeared, recording. The argument escalated, cruel truths spilling across the hardwood Dad installed. By the time they noticed their audience, it was too late. That night, the video was everywhere. Local Facebook groups, neighborhood apps, real estate gossip forums. My mother and stepbrother destroying each other in front of strangers. I watched it once, then closed my laptop. Karma's collection was accelerating. The foreclosure notice came through official channels. I saw it cross my desk marked urgent. The bank was seizing the property for public auction. All proceeds would go to paying Mom's debt. Anything left over she'd keep. But there wouldn't be anything left over. I registered for the auction under an LLC I'd created. Maple Trust Holdings. Untraceable to me. Anonymous. Mom wouldn't know who bought her house until after the gavel fell. I saw her one more time before the auction. She came to the office asking to speak with the agent handling her property. The receptionist pointed to my door. She walked in and for a moment our eyes met. But she still didn't see me. She only saw what I'd become. Professional, distant, powerful. I need help, she said, sitting down uninvited. The auction is scheduled for next week. Is there any way to delay it? I kept my voice neutral. Auctions are scheduled by the bank. I don't have that authority. She twisted her hands in her lap. I just need more time. My daughter, she's doing well now. Maybe she could help me. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Have you asked her? She looked away. We're not speaking. I made mistakes. But family should forgive, right? I clicked my pen slowly. That depends on the mistake. She left without getting the answer she wanted. I sat in my office for a long time after, staring at Dad's photograph on my desk. The one from the porch. His handwriting on the back. Promise me you'll always protect this home. I was trying, Dad. I was trying. The auction was held on a Wednesday morning in a bland conference room that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. Folding chairs faced a podium where a bank representative shuffled papers. Mom sat in the third row wearing a dress I recognized from years ago. Dean wasn't there. Apparently he'd moved to another state, leaving her to face the consequences alone. I sat in the back corner wearing sunglasses despite being indoors and a hat pulled low. Paranoid maybe. But I couldn't risk her recognizing me yet. Not before the gavel fell. The auctioneer explained the rules. Minimum bid, increments, payment terms. Standard procedure. Mom sat rigid, her jaw clenched. She'd bragged to the family that even in foreclosure she'd make a fortune. that the auction would bring in investors fighting for prime property. The bidding started. Silence. Nobody raised their hand. The auctioneer repeated the minimum bid. Still nothing. Mom's face began to crack. One man finally bid, probably a flipper looking for cheap inventory. Mom relaxed slightly. Another bid came. Then another. Small increases, cautious interest. The price climbed slowly, nowhere near what she'd promised relatives. When it reached a number that would barely cover her debt to the bank, I raised my hand. The number I called out was exactly $100 more than needed to pay off the bank. Silence fell. The other bidders shook their heads and sat back. The auctioneer looked around the room. Going once. Going twice. The gavel slammed down like thunder. Sold to bidder 47. I'd won. Mom's shoulders sagged. She'd gotten nothing. Every dollar would go to the bank. She stood slowly, gathering her purse. She didn't cry. She just looked empty. I waited until she reached the door before standing. Time to reveal myself. She was signing the final paperwork when I approached. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor. The bank representative droned on about transfer dates and key surrender. Mom nodded mechanically, broken and defeated. I removed my sunglasses. Hello, Mom. She turned. Her eyes went wide, confused at first. Then recognition hit like a physical blow. Kara. Her voice was barely a whisper. That's right. Kept my tone even. The bank representative glanced between us. You two know each other? She's my daughter, Mom said, the words catching in her throat. He looked down at his papers. And apparently the new owner of this property. Mom stared at me, realization washing over her in waves. You bought it. You're the one who bid. I nodded once. You sold it, Mom. I just honored your decision. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Care, please. We can work this out. You got what you wanted. I wanted my father's house that he left specifically to me. I wanted my family to not steal from me. I wanted my mother to act like a mother. My voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. Each word landed with the weight of years. But I learned to want different things. I learned to build my own life from the rubble you left me in. Her eyes filled with tears. I made mistakes. I was grieving. Your father's death destroyed me. It destroyed me too, I said quietly. But I didn't betray anyone. The bank representative cleared his throat. The property transfers in 30 days. You'll need to vacate by then. Mom looked at him, then back at me. Where am I supposed to go? I picked up the papers he'd slid across the table. I don't know, Mom. But I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're very resourceful when it comes to taking care of yourself. I walked out without looking back. Behind me I heard her sob. Once I would have turned around. Would have comforted her, sacrificed for her, believed her promises. But that version of me died the day she signed away my father's house. This version knew better. The fallout was immediate and loud. Within hours my phone exploded with messages from relatives. Aunt Patricia, how could you humiliate your mother like this? Uncle Marcus, you're cruel and vindictive. Your father would be ashamed. Cousin Jade, this is why we cut you off. You're toxic. I read each message once, then deleted it. None of them asked what Mom had done to me. None of them wanted the truth. They just wanted me to stay the villain in the story they'd already written. Dean sent a message too. Just one line, you think you've won. You haven't. I blocked his number. I didn't need to hear from him again. But there was one message that mattered. From Taylor, the friend who'd let me sleep on her couch and never asked for anything in return. I'm proud of you. You survived. That's what matters. That night I drove to the house. My house. I sat in the driveway as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple Dad used to call painter's colors. Thought about calling Mom. About offering some kind of peace or compromise. But every time I reached for the phone I remembered. The forged papers. The eviction. The family dinner where they'd celebrated my loss. Dean driving away in Dad's truck. Years of silence and stolen inheritance. Oh, peace had to be earned. Forgiveness required acknowledgement of harm. She'd given me neither. I got out of the car and walked to the porch. The wood creaked under my feet, familiar and welcoming. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Waiting. I stood in the center of the living room and whispered, I'm home, Dad. I kept my promise. The next morning a letter arrived by courier. Expensive paper, formal seal. I opened it standing in my new kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows that would soon be clean. The letter was from Vincent Shaw, Dad's old lawyer who'd told me about karma. Dear Kara, if you're reading this, you've reclaimed your father's house. He asked me to give you this letter after you'd proven yourself worthy of his legacy. Some might call that manipulative. I call it faith. Your father knew your mother would try to take what he'd left you. He saw the greed growing in her long before his illness took him. But he also believed you were strong enough to get it back on your own terms. Not through courts or lawyers but through your own perseverance. Inside this envelope is the deed to the property, legally transferred to you upon your father's death. It's the real one. The one your mother forged and filed was never valid. Your father had me file the authentic deed in a separate county office as insurance. You've always been the legal owner. You just didn't know it. My hands shook as I read. But he wanted you to fight for it anyway. To learn, to grow, to become the person who could protect not just the house but yourself. You've done that. He would be proud. The home will always return to the one who loves it. And you, Kara, loved it enough to earn it twice. With respect, Vincent Shaw. I slid down the kitchen cabinet to the floor, the letter clutched in my hand. Dad had known. All along he'd known. The house had always been mine. Legally. Officially. Unquestionably. Mom's entire scheme had been built on a lie she was too greedy to verify. I laughed through tears. Then I cried through laughter. The sound echoed through the empty rooms, filling them with life again. I spent 6 months restoring the house. I hired contractors to fix the porch, replace the gutters, repair the roof. But I did the rest myself. Every weekend I painted walls in the colors Dad had chosen. I refinished the floors he'd installed. I replanted the garden with the same flowers he'd loved. Slowly, room by room, the house came back to life. I hung Dad's pictures on the walls. Set his favorite chair in the corner. Found his old toolbox in the garage and displayed it like art. This wasn't just restoration. It was resurrection. One Saturday evening as I planted tomatoes in the backyard, I heard a car door slam. I stood up, wiping dirt from my hands, and turned. Mom stood at the garden gate. She'd lost more weight. Her clothes hung loose and her hair had gone completely gray. She looked like someone who'd been hollowed out from the inside. We stared at each other across the garden Dad had built. Finally she spoke. The house looks beautiful. I said nothing. Can I come in? Her voice was small, uncertain. Just a knock. Please. Every instinct screamed no. But I thought of Dad. He'd left me this house, yes. But he'd also left me his kindness. His belief in second chances. I wasn't ready to forgive. But maybe I was ready to listen. I nodded once and led her inside. She walked through the rooms slowly, touching things with trembling fingers. When we reached the kitchen she stopped. I'm sorry, she said. The words sounded rehearsed. I was wrong. About everything. I leaned against the counter. Keep going. She sat down at the kitchen table without being invited. Her hands folded and unfolded in her lap, nervous energy with nowhere to go. After your father died, I was angry, she began. Angry at him for leaving me. Angry at the world. And angry at you. I remained standing. Why me? Because he loved you more. The words came out bitter. Every decision he made was about you. This house, the will, everything. I was his wife for 20 years, but you were his favorite. I resented that. The honesty was brutal but not surprising. I'd always known somewhere deep down. So you stole from me to even the score? She flinched. I told myself I deserved it. That I'd sacrificed my life for this family. That you were young and could start over. I had nothing. You had a daughter who trusted you, I said quietly. That was something. She nodded, tears finally falling. I know. And I destroyed it. The money's gone, Kara. Every penny. Dean took most of it. Bad investments, gambling, drugs. The rest I spent trying to fill the emptiness. And now. She looked up. Now I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat. I work part-time at a grocery store. Most of the family won't speak to me. Dean's in rehab in another state. I'm completely alone. Part of me felt vindicated. But mostly I just felt sad. This broken woman had once been my mother. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to forgive me, she whispered. I want us to be family again. I walked to the window looking out at Dad's garden. You did deserve love, Mom. But not lies. Not theft. Not betrayal. I turned back to her. I can't give you forgiveness yet. Maybe not ever. But I can give you honesty. What you did broke something in me that took years to rebuild. I'm not the daughter you remember. That girl is gone. She wiped her eyes. Then who are you now? Someone who learned that family is more than blood. It's respect. Trust. Showing up. I paused. You didn't show up. Not when it mattered. She stood slowly. Can I ask one thing? I waited. When you remember your father, remember me too. Not the person I became, but who I was before grief made me ugly. I nodded. I'll try. She left through the front door, her steps slow and careful. I watched from the porch as she got into her old car and drove away. I didn't know if I'd see her again. Part of me hoped I would. Part of me hoped I wouldn't. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a police detective. Dean had been arrested. The charges were long. Fraud, embezzlement, drug trafficking. He'd been running schemes across 3 states, using fake identities and stolen money. Mom's money. My money. The money from the house that was never legally hers to sell. We'll need you to testify, the detective said. Your mother's already agreed to cooperate. I hung up feeling numb. Dean's downfall should have satisfied me. But it just felt like more wreckage from a bomb that had detonated years ago. Mom lost her studio apartment shortly after. She couldn't afford rent on her grocery store salary. I heard through the family grapevine that she was staying in a shelter. Aunt Patricia, the one who'd called me ungrateful, refused to help her. Uncle Marcus wouldn't return her calls. Jade blocked her number. The same people who'd celebrated her stealing from me now abandoned her in poverty. Karma's final collection. One evening I sat on the porch Dad built, watching the sunset paint his garden gold. Thought about calling Mom. About offering help. But every time I reached for the phone, I remembered her cold voice. Not anymore. I remembered being evicted. Sleeping on a couch. Being called ungrateful by people who never asked for my side. I'd survived without her. Built a life without her. The question wasn't whether she deserved help. The question was whether helping her would damage the peace I'd fought so hard to build. That night I decided. I sent her a text with the address of a women's shelter that offered job training and mental health services. No money. No invitation home. Just information. She replied, "Thank you." I didn't respond. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. But maybe you can leave stepping stones. I've lived in Dad's house for 3 years now. Every morning I make coffee in the kitchen where he taught me to cook. Every evening I sit on the porch where we used to watch storms roll in. The house doesn't feel haunted anymore. It feels alive. I planted new flowers in the garden last spring. Roses like Dad loved. They bloomed red and wild, taking over the fence line. When people ask about my family, I keep it simple. My father left me a house. My mother tried to take it. I got it back. They usually nod, satisfied with the hero's journey version. But the truth is messy. I didn't win because I was righteous. I won because I was stubborn. Because I learned the system that hurt me. Because I waited for karma to do its work. And because somewhere, somehow, Dad had protected me even after death. The house taught me something important. Ownership isn't just about deeds and documents. It's about love. Dad loved this house because we built memories in it. I love it because I fought for it. Mom never loved it. She just loved what she thought it could give her. Last week I got a letter from her. No return address, just a short note. I hope you're happy there. I hope it gives you the peace it never gave me. Maybe in another life I would have been the mother you deserved. In this one I failed. But you didn't fail. You became exactly who your father hoped you'd be. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to see that. You don't have to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But know this. I'm proud of who you've become even though I had nothing to do with it. Especially because I had nothing to do with it. I folded the letter and put it in the drawer with Dad's. I don't know if I'll ever respond. For now I'm focused on living. Building. Healing. Dad's voice echoes sometimes in the quiet moments. Promise me you'll always protect this home. I kept that promise. Not just the building but what it represented. Love. Legacy. The belief that some things are worth fighting for. As the sun sets over the garden, painting everything gold, I whisper into the empty evening. I'm home, Dad. And this time I'm staying. The house settles around me warm and sure. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some end with revenge. Mine ended with something simpler and harder. Peace. Dignity became my revenge. But more importantly, survival became my victory. And in the end, the home returned to the one who loved it most. Just like Dad knew it would.